Welcome back. Yes, just focusing on the judiciary now. There's a lot going on there. We've got Victor Gewa here with us. He's the National Coordinator, Advocate for People's Rights and Justice. Thank you for coming on today.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Well, speaking about people's rights and justice, we know that justice doesn't come easy. In fact, nothing good comes easy these days. Even those who are asking for restructuring, nothing is going to drop on anybody's laps. Because I heard some people say jokingly, look, we fought for these things, with some of us with our blood. And you young people just want us to drop it on your laps. That's not going to happen. You have to work harder. But that's the lighter note. But looking at the NJC now and all of those meetings, well, maybe many were looking to see, look, what is eventually going to happen? But then they met and said, we've submitted this to the president. We can't announce it before without giving him that courtesy. How do you see all of this playing out?
Well, thank you very much. It's a bit sad. It's sad because the judiciary is one of the most important arm of government of a country. And that of Nigeria in the past few months have really gotten, the barrage of pressure, of, what I would say like a subtle threat and undue influence coming from the state, as we can see in the trial of the CJN, suspended CJN. We were very, very pivotal in the protest against the trial in the CCT. At the CCT, I was personally there. I coordinated some lawyers, to protest against this trial, not because that we are saying is innocent, or not because we are saying is guilty, but because we are looking at the rule of law and constitutionalism. We believe that due process should be followed. And the due process to us, and based on the Constitution and various case law, is that the NJC, which I just learned now that they have done the recommendation, should deal with the CJN because it's a member of the CJN. It's a member of the NJC.
We're still talking legal matters, but we'll make a detour just a bit. We'll head to Lagos. They're going to be talking about this rivers, what's the implication of that some matters that they're supposed to determine. And again, it's still all about the judiciary. Gimba.
I have with me, joining us by Skype on the program this morning, Professor Richard Wokocha. He's the Associate Professor of Public Law, Rivers State University, and also the Chairman of the NBA Omoko branch in Rivers State. I want to thank you so much indeed for joining us via Skype. You've been listening to the developments up to this time that we've had the governor-elect, who is Nyesom Wike, who is actually the governor also in that state. But before all of this happened, we had the situation whereby the APC really, in this case, felt that they had a stake and should be part of this process, but they didn't get to that point because of two court judgments, as a matter of fact. But how do you see the insistence of some of the players in the APC who are in court, as it were, right now, at the Supreme Court, saying that they should be declared as the authentic candidates for these elections that have been concluded? We seem to have a little audio challenge there, but that's Professor Richard Wokocha, an Associate Professor of Public Law, who will be looking at some of the issues developing around Rivers State, leading to the elections, post-elections also, because those matters are still yet to be decided. Some of them are in court, so we'd like to get a clearer view of where it stands. But let's quickly go back to Chamberlain and Ayo in Abuja again, where the discussion continues. Chamberlain.
All right, so I guess we'll go on for this for a while and see when that is sorted.
Yeah, you said something about the judiciary the other time. You said that it was sad and that judiciary seems to be going under for one reason or the other. What is the reason? Why do you think that is?
Well, I need to put this in perspective. There's nothing wrong for, for anybody, any person who feels that any judicial officer has been corrupted, or, that any judicial officer is found wanting, for the person to write, to ask for investigation. The reason is because there's nobody that should be above the law. There's no, immunity for judicial officers against, issues of wrongdoing or, judicial misconduct, as the case may be. But what we are saying as lawyers, as Nigeria Bar Association, is that the proper procedure must be followed. Now, talking about your question, what is the reason why we have some of these influences, from external, from the various other arms of government against the judicial officer? It's principally because of the role the judicial officers are playing. We just concluded an election some few weeks ago. As I'm talking to you today, in Bauchi State, we have 32 election petitions in the tribunal. In Abia State, we have 30 election petitions. In Enugu State, over 16. Cross River, 18. Katsina, about 7. Almost all the states have issues of petitions in election tribunal. This have put enormous pressure on our judicial officers. Election shouldn't be an affair that judges should be talking about.
And judges are not only dealing with election cases, they are dealing with other cases.
With other cases. So now, I'm talking about why it seems that the pressure is on the judicial officers. Now, the political leadership will now be determined by the results of the election tribunal. And so, persons in government, political parties want to ensure that the product of a judicial decision will be to their favor.
So now,
and that is why you can see that the pressure is so much on our judicial officers.
How is this NJC matter going to change anything? What kind of impact will it have on the proceedings in the judiciary concerning the elections?
You see, it is decisions in an institution must be taken not for today's consideration, but for the impact of the future, for the repercussion of the future. So the NJC must know that at this point in time, any decision that is coming out from them is going to redefine the way and manner our judicial officers will be treated. And let me say this, we are just hearing some news coming from Kogi State, how the government of Kogi State is planning or plotting to remove the chief judge of Kogi State. And what that means is that we have 3 arms of government: the executive, the judiciary, and the legislature. Separation of power. It is established to bring in checks and balances so that we don't have what we call authoritarian democracy. So the first arm of government should check the second arm, and the second arm to check the third arm. But when we get to a point where we now have a prefect regulating the 2 arms of government, we are going to what I would
but how did this happen, or how is this perceived to be happening in the first instance? Because the judiciary have been talking about judicial reforms for decades.
Yes.
Why is that happening? Why isn't that happening?
Yes, I will tell you why. Firstly, the NJC, established under 3rd Schedule, paragraph 20 of the 1999 Constitution, has the incumbent and inherent power to deal with erring judicial officers. As a matter of fact, paragraph 21 of the 3rd Schedule of the 1999 Constitution spells out the duty of the NJC. Especially this paragraph A says that it is the duty of the NJC, apart from the normal obligation of recommending to the president in terms of the CJN and justice of the Supreme Court, Court of Appeal, and other judicial officers. They have a duty to exercise disciplinary control over its officers. So when a judicial officer is erring, the first port of call should be to the NJC. And so when you now see an interference, when you now see any arm of the government, whether it is executive or this legislature, taking an act that is not expressly provided in the Constitution, that particular act will be mustering, threatening and undermining the judicial officers, because the judicial officers cannot speak for themselves. They are not permitted by law to go to...
That's in Nigeria?
Yes, in Nigeria, of course.
But we've seen some countries where judiciary, they are not beginning to have spokespersons. In some cases, they elect them to be in certain offices. But we seem to be stuck in our ways here.
Yes, that's what the code of conduct for judicial officers says.
But they can change.
The judicial cannot. I mean, the CJN, the only way you can hear him is when you see this in the CCT.
He cannot come and give press conferences. He can have a spokesperson.
He cannot. Well, you cannot be a spokesperson
sometimes.
Yes, but not to talk about issues that relates to the activity upon which he's being questioned about.
Why not?
Why? Because that is it should be seen and not be heard, except in court.
Now, you said something the other time that whatever infraction is reported against a judicial officer should be taken straight to the NJC first.
Yes.
But you know that there is also a provision in the Code of Conduct Bureau Act that says that when you report a judicial officer based on CCB expectations, it should be reported straight to the CCT.
No, not for judicial officer, for public officer.
What's the difference between a public, a judicial officer who is, first of all, a public officer before you are, once you are in the civil service, what's the difference?
Now, I will tell you the difference, and the difference is a product of law. In law, we say that the specific supersedes the general. The general provision is for public officers. But when the public officer has now transformed into a judicial officer, he now falls into the category of the NJC. And the law, the Constitution says that it is the NJC that has a disciplinary control over its officers.
But the CCB Act didn't make that distinction.
No, that is why I said it is a general implication.
Well, gentlemen, you're going to be taking us back to this argument that preceded how we got here in the first place.
Because
we need to move forward.
We are like it's going on right now. We have gotten to a point where we say, okay, he's there. He's going to the system.
Yes, but at the moment now, there are lots of people who are looking, because yes, we've concluded elections. But yeah, we also know that there are cases in the judiciary, because tribunal, the same thing, judiciary. And many are looking to see how, because whichever way the pendulum swings in those cases will determine the impression people have moving forward. So that's why we're talking about some of these things today. So the expectations that people have of the judiciary, where they say justice must not just be done, but it must be seen to have been done. Yeah. So that's going to weigh heavily. Or does that even weigh heavily on the judiciary in context of when they say, look, they don't give their judgment based on what happens in the court of public opinion?
Yeah. You see, justice is based on... It was Lord Dining in 1620 that said that justice is built on confidence. And confidence is destroyed when an ordinary man on the street looks at the judge and says the judge is biased. Because justice is based on confidence. So we need to do all it takes to protect the sanctity of the judiciary. And we are not opposed to ensuring that the bad eggs, there are bad eggs in the judiciary, we are no doubt about it. But we are saying that the judiciary, which is the NJC, has the power to wield out some of those bad eggs, which they have been doing.
Okay.
And they will continue to do.
That's another point where people will say, are we sure about that? But you know, part of the issue is what Gimba was trying to raise, which another matter in the judiciary, in the courts, trying to see, is there by friction of time, has certain things happened? But let's even go back to him and see if we can go on with that one. Gimba.
You see, just listening to you guys, we know that there's just so much to talk about, especially ones that have to do with the judiciary. But once again, let's bring back Professor Richard Wokocha. He's the Associate Professor of Public Law, Rivers State University. Also, the Chairman, the NBA Omokoro branch in Rivers State. I do sincerely thank you for joining us again, because you could hear us, but we couldn't hear you. But that is now sorted out. Now, give me your impression. What's your views to this insistence in the courts? We know that a lot of cases, as Abuja guest mentioned, tribunal cases already just popping up just about everywhere in every other state. But with regards to Rivers State, before even the elections came, some cases were already in court, one of which is the one that Senator Magnus Abe took to court challenging some of the processes that brought him and another person, I think that will be Mr. Cole, for governorship under the umbrella of the APC in Rivers State. But what's your view in total? Now that he is insisting that he is indeed the authentic candidate that should be considered. Oh dear, you know, sometimes this, it happens now and again, but we'll try to get that sorted. Just be patient. But Chamberlain, let me get back to you now while we try to sort this out.
Well, yes, we're going to have to appeal to Prof to just be patient with us, because even in the judiciary, justice doesn't come so fast and so easy. So,
you know, Mr. Giwa, this is all, you know, coming so interesting. This audio is also saying that sometimes the judiciary is silent. You know, so that's just. But then, let me ask you this: how easy is it for a judge to be corrupted?
Wow. Oh. Wow, that's a tough one. Well, corruption in the judiciary or for a judicial officer is not something that ordinarily should be easy for these reasons. One, constitutionally, for you to be a judge, you are supposed to have been a lawyer who have practiced for not less than 10 years. I mean, subject to other conditions where the CJN can appoint, I mean, the president can appoint somebody of special character. But what we have in the Constitution is that for you to be a judge of any of our superior courts, you must have been a lawyer who have practiced for not less than 10 years. And what that means is that you should have gotten some experience, you should have moved away from the mundane, asking for money for food, having issue with your rent. You know, you cannot take your children to school. You should have gone from those elementary, you know, hierarchy of needs. So, the issue of why somebody should come and, you know, influence you with something should not be a priority for you. Do you understand? I mean, having practiced for about 10 years, you should be able to pay those elementary bills. So why then should you be carrying out your function and you'll be influenced? So naturally and ordinarily, bribing a judicial officer should not be something that should be easy. However, it is now we start looking at what type and kind of bribe, because there was a panel set up some years back where I think it was Justice Carol show that was saying that our judicial officers are now billionaires, and they have houses, they have billions in their accounts because of these same politicians. Because, I mean, I don't know how many Nigerians have billions. Businessmen will not want to put their billions in the hands of somebody. It's only politicians who don't earn this money that want to influence, like what I was saying, now that the judiciary have to determine who becomes a political leader. Some persons, now, so let me tell you, I have been in some cases where people were preparing for election. They did their campaign, they planned for their campaign, they planned for electioneering. They also planned how to bribe judges if you get to election tribunal.
So, is it that those...
And that is how bad the system is.
Yeah, but is it that...
But whether they will succeed in the bribing is something that some of us we don't have control over.
Is it that those ones who are approached, don't they have a choice?
No, of course they do. And a lot of them have been approached and they did not cave into such influences. And we can tell you, you heard the CJN saying that I've never collected bribe, you know, during his testimony some days ago. A lot of them, they are prone to everybody. They are prone to, I mean, Nigeria, we're all Nigeria. Some of them have their brothers, some of them are members of a church, some of them are members of the mosques, some of them are your neighbors, some of them are your social group members, some of them belong to your play, they go to their children go to the same school with your children, so you have access to this person. These persons may come and try to influence their decision. But like the oath, the allegiance to their oath is that you should do justice without fear or favor. And that is what should bind any judicial officer. Yes, the people will come to try to influence you, but you have that responsibility, not just as a person, but based on the oath you have sworn to, that justice should be done without fear or favor.
But now that those cases where you say, if some of them give cases, the judge, or people may say this judge is biased, but that doesn't necessarily mean that all the cases that are handed down, you won't have certain persons in some quarters who will disagree. It doesn't invalidate some of those judgments, does it?
No, it doesn't. But you see, we in Nigeria, and of course we got our system from the British, there's what we call judicial precedent. And I can remember the CJN, the suspended CJN, did a lot in terms of ensuring that we sanitize the judiciary. There's a committee that was set up to look at corruption-related cases and how to expedite actions on some of those cases and see how prosecutors are handling some of those matters. And in one of the meetings he presided over, he was saying that judges should be above board. That it does not matter whether the judgment is in your favor or not. What is important is when he looks at a judgment, you will be able to say whether or not the judge was influenced because of our judicial precedent. I mean, I should be able to go to, as a lawyer, I should be able to say, okay, if A and B is C, the decision should be D. That is what we call judicial precedent. But in Nigeria today, we are seeing conflicting decisions coming from the Court of Appeal, coming from various courts. And
why is that?
That is the influence we are talking about.
By whom?
By politicians influencing the judicial
Again,
officers.
going back to what Chamberlain asked the other time, don't they have a choice to say no? Especially because of the oath.
Just like they have a choice to say no, other persons, other people who are exposed. We have seen members of the executive. We've seen governors gone to jail in this few months.
Okay, in other words.
So the point I'm making is that while there are a lot of them who have said no to some of those influences, to some of those, there are also some who, because of the weakness of their faith.
Faith?
Yes, weakness of their faith.
Is the judiciary about faith now?
No, faith in the system. They are weak about the system. That, maybe. And also, it depends on who is bringing the influence, who is exerting that influence. We have seen cases where they don't just, some of them, it's not just on pecuniary motives.
Wait a minute,
somebody could tell you, look, if you don't give us the decision in this particular manner, I will not, your promotion will not be guaranteed.
But Mr. Giwa,
that is a form of influence. So some of these influences are not pecuniary influences.
But
sometimes it will be influence in terms of your
promotion. Are you making excuses for some people to keep saying yes and not more of those who will consistently say no, no matter whose ox is God?
No, our principle in law is that justice must be done even if evil falls. So we are bound by the law, and judicial officers are bound by their oath of office and oath of allegiance. So no judicial officer, the law does not contemplate that a judicial officer should kowtow to any person, or any favor, or any influence.
So the law doesn't have any provision.
And that is why, as a matter of fact, they are viewed to be above board. So no judicial officer should have any reason to be influenced by any person or authority or by even pecuniary interest.
Should.
Yes, no judicial officer should have any reason.
Should.
Yes, should have any reason.
But
we are also, when you hear influences, it may not be, like I said, it may not be pecuniary. It may not be, somebody bought money and all of that. So we have cases where people are threatened. Judicial officers are threatened that you will not be promoted. Or we will not even give you security. We will not do that. We've had a lot of cases like that. So when you hear about influences, not necessarily monetary,
All right.
It could be influences could be from the executive, influences can be from other parts of the...
All right, we'll come back to this in a moment. Stay with us.
Let's now head back to Chamberlain and Ayo in Abuja.
All right, thank you very much indeed, Gimba. Well, you were watching and listening. Well, Prof said, I hope lawyers are watching and listening. What's your impression of what he said towards the end?
With due respect to Prof, I beg to differ to the extent of which he said that lawyers should not, should be able to distinguish between the administrative suspension, as in the case of the CJN, by the president, and that of suspension of the judicial officers by the NJC. I think it is begging the issue. So let me concede to that argument. So what it means, therefore, is that if a governor of a state discovers that a judicial officer or the state judge has breached, in his own opinion, a particular law, the governor of the state will just wake up one morning and say, please, let's suspend that man, he's a public officer. Where is the independence of the judiciary? Where is the checks and balances?
But that wasn't happened in Kogi.
No, I'm not saying, I'm just telling you, if you are going to take that argument, that the suspension of the CJN might be an administrative. But let me tell you what the Constitution says. The operative word is misconduct. What is misconduct? The Constitution per se did not define what a misconduct, but it says that it includes any violation of the Constitution. Any. If the judicial officer failed to, as a judicial officer, he fails to declare his asset, it is a misconduct to that judicial officer. And in his department, I'm using the word department now, that of the CJN is the judiciary. And the judiciary shall deal with that person. His own action of failing to declare his assets because he's firstly, as you said, a public servant, and a judicial officer that falls under the persons that should declare their assets. The NJC has the prerogative to discipline him because that amount of misconduct.
As you all know, the cases have since, the horse has since bolted from the stable. But we'll come back and get our concluding moments in a moment. Don't go away.
Breakfast is the most important meal of the day. Give your family a great start from a wholesome breakfast with the cholesterol-free new Mamador light fat spread for bread. New Mamador spread, deliciously nourishing for a bright start.
All right, welcome back. Our concluding moments now. But now, looking at the way the cases as they played out in the judiciary in Rivers and what is happening with the CJN matter, can you say that the judiciary is really independent?
Well, the judiciary is supposed to be independent, and to some extent, I would say that the judiciary is independent. Of course, they are still independent, but we have seen some level of, considering these various activities that are unfolding. I will have a reservation on the actual, in real time, the independence of the judiciary. Because like I said, if a judicial officer is under one form of influence or the other, especially coming from the executive, he will not be able to speak out.
What could have informed this compromise of the judiciary?
Well, like I said, because the politicians themselves, Nigerians ourselves, we have not lived according to the rules. I mean, we even include, we lawyers. Can you imagine what happened in Bayelsa State and what was happening in Rivers State, where lawyers went to court to stop a coalition process, where the Electoral Act made it expressly clear that when election process have started, the court has no jurisdiction until after the process. And in that case, you go to the election tribunal. Lawyers are still going to court, shopping for judgment. And I think that we are all contributors to some of these, dissent we are having in the judiciary. If there's any dissent to barbarism in the society, and we really need to,
who knows,
at this point to really...
It may be appropriate to say, physician, heal thyself.
Exactly. And that's what the NJC can do. The NJC has the competence to, look at itself. And
all right, then we'll anchor at that point. Victor Gewa is a national coordinator, advocate for people's rights and justice. Thank you for coming on this morning.
Thank you for having me.
All right, but just before, I need to mention Kenny Ledun's email. He's talking about some unfortunate kidnapping case in Bauchi, in the Toro local government area, and then demanding some ransom. But you'll do well to let the police authorities know that he's referring to something we raised in our opening sequence. Well, that's the show today. We thank you all for watching. We'll see you tomorrow. I'm Chamberlain Uso.
I am Akine is my name.
And I am Gimba Umar. Thank you for watching.
The views and opinions expressed by guests on this program are those of the maker and do not reflect the views, opinions, and endorsement of Channels Television.